Well, welcome everybody to Tuesdays with Tom, and we are just going to spend a great 30 minutes mining timely wisdom and encouragement through the timeless pages of Holy Scripture. So I'm Holly Justice, and I'm here at the Brookside campus of Christ Community, and I'm your host for this live broadcast, and I'm here with Tom Nelson. Hi, Tom, our lead senior
Holly,
pastor.
everybody.
Yeah, so we've had a good time with this, and are so glad to have many of you back and some for the first time. So we welcome you. And in a moment, we'll have the opportunity to just hear some wisdom and insight from Tom around a topic that just follows our theme these past 6 weeks around wisdom. And following Tom's teaching, we'll have a little bit of Q&A time. So this is recorded live, just as a reminder. So we will keep the mics muted to start off. And you may want to open up your chat in the Zoom window. You can just click on that little word bubble at the bottom that says chat, and that will bring up a window. Sometimes we put questions in there, or if you have something you'd like Tom to dig into more or address, you can add that as well. So we know not everybody has the option to turn their camera on, but we love it when you have your camera on, just to see each other's faces, feel the unity of the body, even though we're so spread out around the city. So I'm now going to hand it over to Pastor Tom to share with us about today's big question, which is around what is the one character trait that we can't afford to live without. So it's yours, Tom.
Hey, thanks, Holly. Thanks, everybody. I see some people munching and some faces, so it's nice to see familiar faces. Welcome. Number 7 is perfect, but 6 is going to have to do on this. So this is our 6th and final time. But thank you for those who are joining us today and also been with us this time. So great question Holly raises, and that's kind of where I want to go today is, we could raise that question, what is the one character trait you cannot afford to live without? There's many answers I'm sure we could add. But I want to give you what I think is one of the most, if not the most. Okay, so we could debate what's the most way to answer that. But what is the one thing that irreducibly wise people have in common? What is it that without it we will never fully be wise? So I want to suggest that it comes from this Latin word absurd. Okay, if you look up the Latin word base of absurd, it has a broad semantic range, but one of the dynamics of it that is a continual thread of its meaning through time is a sense of deafness. In other words, one who cannot hear well, not just physiologically, but there's a more comprehensive understanding of absurd. To live an absurd life, which seems to be a bit opposite, don't you think, of wisdom, is to not listen well. So by definition, an absurd life is devoid of listening, or we may use the word concentrated attentiveness, paying close attention to what you're paying attention to, basically. So underlying that, again, is this posture of listening, or we may say also, not just listening, but listening with the hope of learning, which is the posture of teachability. The posture of teachability. Now, I've had a few birthdays. I always say I'm not sure how many more I have. I think I have a few, but one of the things I love in Scripture is how Scripture and wisdom addresses the various seasons of life. Now, I know some of you are at different seasons. Some of you are younger, some of you are older, but Ecclesiastes 4:13 has increasingly been important to me. Both as a husband, and my role as a husband, my role in pastoral leadership, organizational leadership. And Ecclesiastes 4:13, Ecclesiastes is a part of the wisdom literature of the Old Testament, where we've kind of spent most of our time in these 6 weeks. Proverbs is chock full, Ecclesiastes is full as well. Ecclesiastes 4:13 says this: better was a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king who no longer knew how to take advice. I'm going to say that one more time because I'll say it for me anyway, since I'm not sure I'm a king, but I know I'm a little older and I don't want to be a foolish leader. Okay, so better is a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king who no longer knew how to take advice. Wow, that's a good one. And notice in this text how there's a contrast of a poor and wise youth. You think about in wisdom literature, poverty, again, is not preferred. It's not saying that if you're wise, you're going to be rich. But a wise life often leads to more material abundance. And that's just how God designed it. It doesn't mean that there's a perfect causation. But poorness often suggests, in wisdom literature anyway, a lack of wisdom in how we live life. Okay, and there's more to that. But I'm just going to say, notice the youth, the idea of youth. Youth is not a place where we often think of teachability, listening well, or wisdom. But here, the writer of Ecclesiastes compares that it's much better to be a poor young person who has some wisdom than an older person. A king would be rich and wealthy, and that, right, who no longer takes advice. And I think that's a tendency, again, of places of age and power and privilege and resources, that we think we know it all, right? We're the king. We've got it all figured out. And there's a real danger of a lack of listening, a lack of teachability, to live an absurd life, even as an old king, okay? So I want to unpack a little bit the idea of the high importance for all of us to have wise counsel in our lives. And we have to learn to listen, but we need to have the right people to listen to, correct? So the book of Proverbs brings both of those things together. Living wisely is not a solitary enterprise. It's not a solo sport. It's not free soloing. Living wisely requires community. It requires multi-generational wisdom. And it also involves, I think, in different seasons of our life, even a higher need for external input. Holly and I were chatting earlier a little bit about this, but last year, there were lots of reasons, but last year, because of a new season of life, a different kind of birthday, things like that, but also my organizational stewardship, I took the initiative to do the most comprehensive 360 evaluation of my life ever. Professional coach, professional therapist, organizational consultant. And I felt the stewardship of my age, but also the stewardship of my responsibilities, and a new season that I'm embarking on. Liz joined me in that too. We're in an empty nest season. So I just want to say that my last year, it's like, you go to you can have a small physical, right? You can have just a really quick physical by a physician, but then you can have a 3-day physical examination. This is 20 years ago now, maybe 15, 20 years ago. I was at the Cooper Clinic in Dallas. And if you've ever gone through a really comprehensive physical examination, it's not an hour at your physician, it's a multi-day evaluation of what you eat. And it's just, anyway, it was the most intense thing I've ever had physically, okay? But I went through that last year in a more non-physical way, in terms of my background, all that sort of thing, my childhood. The therapist looked at my childhood traumas, just to help me get a better understanding of who I am, who I'm called to be, and what I'm called to do. My point is simply, my organizational coach, in my case, my executive coach, really helped me understand more fully, as well as Liz together and therapist, like who I am and what I need to do. But one of the things about that was, in the process of all the evaluation, all the tests, all the examination, my coach, I call him coach, pointed out areas that I was missing it. In other words, he opened my eyes to see things I could not see. One example was, he looked at me at dinner one night, he said, "Tom, how, you have these 2 roles," and he knows me upside down. "How do you think you're doing in terms of your leadership effectiveness?" And, I was going to kind of go like, well, maybe, let me go 80%. Let me at least get a B. And he looked at me and he said, I'd give you about a C or 50%. Okay. And the reason, it wasn't like I was not trying hard or working hard. I was not living into how I could bring the best value to the organizations based on who I was. Does that make sense? I was blind to some things. I didn't see some things. And this is true in all of our lives. So I just want to remind all of us, wherever we are in life, and I'd say some seasons are more acute than others, we have to have outside input from wisdom. So we all have blind spots. You know that is true driving a car, right? You have that blind spot in your car, but that's true of life. We just don't see it. We were never designed to see everything on our own, right? So we need others to help us see what we do not see. All of us have a limited vantage point of our life. We also have limited knowledge, right? We all need to grow, and we all need to stay curious. T.S. Eliot, the great writer, put it this way, and again, I'm leaning into my age. Old men, I think you could say other people, old men ought to be explorers. Ought to be explorers. What that means is we need to stay curious, and we are all rookies every day, whatever stage of life we are. In other words, we need to learn to walk in wisdom, but we need other people to help us with wisdom. And again, I think living the wise life, we understand the importance of outside wise eyes, helping us understand who we are, what we're about, and how we're to live. And ideally, people have been a little further down the road, also help us see things we can't in the moment. Okay, so I simply just want to encourage all of us that the wise walk, again, my big idea is not a solitary walk. And we're going to see this in Proverbs. Okay, there is an ongoing peril of isolation and pride, and that will kill us in terms of the call of wisdom. So let me look at some Proverbs verses with you. This theme is all over Proverbs, okay, just all over it. Let me highlight a little bit. You can do some more study on it, but I simply want to encourage all of us that if we're going to live a wise life, if we're not going to live an absurd life, then we need to learn to listen and be very attentive. And we need to have a posture of humility and teachability so that we can get the wisdom we need from others. Okay. Obviously, the most rich repository of wisdom is actually God's word and the guidance of the Spirit. But we need others to guide us in all dimensions of our life that are wise. Okay, so here's some verses just to kind of stimulate our thinking. Proverbs 9:8. They're not in any great order, but I just went through some of them. Do not reprove a scoffer, or he will hate you. Reprove a wise man, and he will love you. And I think, again, part of wisdom is pointing out areas that we need to change, right? It's like my coach telling me, Tom, I've looked you over for how long in every part of your life, your schedule, your motivational tests, your aptitudes, everything you've done and everything you're about. And you're not perfectly aligned for what you should be doing in terms of who you are. I mean, you can be more effective than you are. Wow, right? How did I respond to that? How did I respond when he said, you're at 50, man, you should be at 80 or 90? I go, whoa, right? I got a C. I was thinking I'd get at least a B. You follow me? But reproof, if it, again, it's well-intended, it has wisdom, right? There can be reproof that's not well-intended. It's just golden for a person of wisdom. And you can learn from anybody, younger, older, people different than you. It's a spirit of listening, okay, and teachability. But I love Proverbs 9:8 because it's like the fulcrum upon wisdom. Proverbs 11:14, I'll scoot here quickly, but where there is no guidance, a people fails, right? A whole nation fails. But in abundance of counselors, there is safety. Proverbs 12:15, think of this, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes. Think of that picture, right in his own eyes, her own eyes. But a wise man listens to advice. A wise, or you'd say a person, I mean, this is written in male language here. Proverbs 13:20, think about this, whoever walks with wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. I remember many, many years ago, someone telling me this. It's like, or so many years, I can't remember. It said, you become what you become based on two things. I might add a third or fourth, but they were brilliant in their wisdom. And I'm not very smart, but I know genius when I find it. So you'll become who you become based on the people you spend time with. I mean, really spend time with, and the books you read. How true that's been in my life. But I mean, the people you truly know well, right? I mean, not just an acquaintance, okay? Who you work with, so forth, will shape your life. What faith community you're a part of will profoundly shape you, right? Also, another text, I'm just going to, Proverbs 15:22, Without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. Proverbs 15:32, whoever ignores instruction despises himself, but he who listens to reproof gains intelligence. Fascinating translation there. Proverbs 18:1, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. Proverbs 19:20, I'm just going to listen to advice and accept instruction that you may gain wisdom about the future. I mean, just the amount of them. I'll just going to give you more because there's so many. Proverbs 20:18, plans are established by counsel. By wise guidance, you wage war. Proverbs 21:11, when a scoffer is punished, the simple become wise. When a wise man is instructed, he gains knowledge. Here's very specific, Proverbs 22:7, incline your ear and hear the words of the wise. Proverbs 23:12, apply your heart to instruction, your ears to the words of knowledge. And again, Proverbs 24:6 has the same, by wise guidance, you have abundance of counselors, right? There are more, okay? So simply just wrapping up, I think the challenge for us is some questions I want to raise, and I think we're going to have some interaction. So how well are you listening? That's the number one thing. If you want to be a wise person, you have to listen well. First, of course, to God, to his word, to the Spirit of God, to others, and to your own heart. It is a listening posture, and that requires a lifestyle of attentiveness. We'll talk about that in a moment. Secondly, who are you looking for wisdom? Where are you looking? And how do you discern that? What season are you in? Because seasons are transitions. When you transition from one season to another, it's a time of great opportunity and great vulnerability. Wisdom needs to greet you in the intersection of a change of season. So I just want to encourage you, it's wisdom is really needed in that intersection, okay? A book I want to highlight for you is The Attentive Life. I think maybe Holly has it. Is written by Leighton Ford. It's a really great book here, and I just want to encourage you, if you're interested in a book that will help you, I think, in attentiveness and wisdom for life. Leighton Ford writes it when he's 76. I don't know if he's still living in this dimension, but an amazing, amazing, insightful, wise person in your own spiritual life and even pacing life. It's called The Attentive Life. It's one I've really loved. One of my favorite books in the last 4 or 5 years, just would say. So let me just wrap it up there. I think we've already kind of run quite a bit of time here. But I just want to encourage all of us in this conversation of wisdom that one of the most important things, when James says, be quick to listen, that's extremely profound in multiple ways, because it is attentive posture, it's a teachability, it's a listening ear that allows you to have a wise walk in life. And you never do that fully alone. We need others who will give us wisdom. Sometimes that's more in a formal professional way, and sometimes that's more in a mentor, non-professional kind of informal way. So may we be wise, and may the lesson from Proverbs and Ecclesiastes today remind us of the importance of listening well to wise counsel.
Tom, thanks for that book recommendation. And I did put that link in the chat if you want to click on that and put it in your shopping cart. So there's that book if you check the chat out. And Tom, we had a good question from Tim Frank around leadership, and when you do say you do find yourself in that position of the king or in authority, he says, isn't it hard to be the king and to not be prideful?
Yeah, I think that is the case. Pride, C.S. Lewis described pride, it's a great question, as the ultimate vice. You think about what is the ultimate vice, and pride is at the core of sin. So it can manifest itself in many, many ways in our life. But yes, the seduction of power and position and all that or people's praise, right, can really get us offline. We think, it's the old Nebuchadnezzar syndrome. Remember old King Neb in Babylon? Like, this is all I've done. Look at me, ain't I great? Look at all the brilliant, and Babylon, I'm going to touch on this in the message. But Babylon was an amazing place. He had reasons to boast. So yes, and I think the more influence, wealth, whatever fame you have, the more you have to guard against pride and isolation. And we could talk more about that. But yes, pride can attach itself to any of us, in any position in life. But I do think it's particularly dangerous when we have positions of visibility and power, to think that we have done it, we deserve it, it's all about us, not about God's blessing.
Mm-hmm. Staying
Good
teachable.
question.
Yeah, good. So how about in your life, Tom, over your whole life, how did you find your most trusted advisors at different transition times, by chance, or did you have a process, or how did you seek out those folks?
Yeah,
And how do you do that today? So,
well, I mentioned what recently I did more comprehensive just because I felt like I really needed it. Yeah, I have done it more in an informal way with different mentors and friends in my life. I wouldn't miss the importance of critics, whether they're writing or verbal critics. Now, sometimes criticism can be injurious to us. We have to be careful because if it's not well-intended or it's just a critical heart rather than a critical mind. But I do want to say that sometimes people who disagree with us or are critics are some of our best counselors, in the sense that there's usually a kernel of truth or some truth that they see that we are either unwilling to see or we are seeing in a distorted way. So I'm just saying, critics, whatever they are, can really help us, but they're hard to hear, right? Because we take it personally. So I'm just saying, I have to learn to respond to critics the right way. Having said that, I do have my mentors and friends over the years. I have sought people out in different areas. So I'm just saying, what are the areas you really feel a need for wisdom? It might be in the area of financial wisdom. It might be in the area of leadership wisdom or parental wisdom, right? Right? Or raising your kids, or in workplace context. So I have found myself seeking that out. The other thing I do want to say is that there are really good places for books. So I'm looking for books that give timely wisdom and timeless wisdom. So I do look for books. I look for book recommendations. I ask friends of what is the best book in this area, which you know. So yeah, I have in my vocation, you'll hear me talk, mention different authors or people that I know that have guided me and have profoundly helped shape, if you're a part of Christ's community, help me serve in this culture and build a culture and so forth. So we made to flourish. So yes, sometimes they're formal, sometimes they're informal. I think I have taken the initiative. Very few times have I had people come into my life and said, I want to sort of mentor you, or I can give you wisdom here. I felt like I've had to sort of identify and seek it out. And I think most of the time we do. I think most people are willing to share their thoughts and experiences with you if you seek them out.
Mm.
But I haven't people come say, hey, Tom, I'm the person of great wisdom. I will give you great wisdom. Listen, sit down, child. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a posture of learning and growth and listening to others. And I do listen. Let me say one more thing. I do think it's important to have people younger than you listen to and older than you listen to. And we tend to think about people older. Now, again, some people older are wise, some people are not. They just have chronological age, right? But wisdom usually takes time to develop. So I would have people further along in their chronological journey that you believe are wise, but also I learn a ton from people younger than me.
That's great. That's great. That's encouraging. Amy has a question, and Amy, I'm just going to let you unmute and ask it. It might be easier than typing, so go ahead.
Well, I actually have two questions. It's a two-parter, so that's why I didn't want to type it out. But it's some wisdom around politics right now, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But just some advice and talking points and wisdom that you might offer when there's dialogue within your inner circle, so people you have close relationship with, that Jesus aligns with a particular political party.
Yeah.
And then the second part of that would be, how should we be looking to Jesus's leadership and his wisdom to inform our own political decisions right now?
Yeah, it's a really awesome question. It's a hard one for me to respond to in this context. I'd love to have coffee with you and give an explanation.
I would happily have coffee.
But I'm just saying, it is a hard navigation. It's always been hard, but I think today it's really hard for Christians because they weight different areas stronger. than others, right? I mean, there are many issues in a political decision, a voting decision. So, you know, that's what makes it so disunifying. And to say, what are the principles Jesus taught that should inform our vote? You know, Jesus emerged and the Bible emerges in a non-democratic world, right? So people didn't have choice of their government. Can I just say that? You know, this American experiment is new. In one sense, it's a blessing, isn't it, Amy? I mean, that we can ideally have some say in our government, right? That's a new experience in Christian history. But with it comes complexity, right? Once you have the choice, Paul and the writers don't write with that government structure in mind. So that also, I'm just saying, it makes it harder for us, I think, because there's competing issues we struggle with at the voting booth, okay? Now, I have my personal convictions, you know, as a voter. Obviously, I'm very careful about talking about that, but I, as a voter, I'm just saying personally, as a voter, not as a pastor, as a voter, I look at a lot of things. I try to weigh them, and I try to weigh some more heavy than others. And that's just, you know, it's a very imperfect world and very imperfect candidates. It's always been, and it's probably even more visible. I say literally visible today. So it is, I'm not being evasive. It's hard to know, but I do personally, I know some people who won't vote. I do think we should vote. And it's not going to be easy because there are going to be competing things that we're feeling. But again, we have, in my mind, I'm more pragmatic. I could be wrong. I have to decide what I think is the best option based on many things. But I have certain things that I weigh more than others. So I don't know if that's not helpful for you, Amy. I'm not trying to, but it is a real important. I would pray. I would be informed. I'd be informed economically, morally, moral issues. I mean, the parties, if you want to say it, let's on national, have a lot of differences, let alone different personalities at the top and character. But they're very different.
Mm-hmm.
So you have
It's
to
definitely a more complex conversation than a quick little lunch Zoom, but it's a good start.
Well, no, but you know what I'm saying. I'm not being evasive.
I know.
My pastoral role,
sure.
I'm very careful not to be partisan. I do have a personal conviction. I just voted last week early, and I made decisions. Mm-hmm. Did I struggle with some of them? Did I feel the weight of different ones? Sure. But I, you know, my framework is I weight some more than others. But and I'm praying for our nation, our leaders. Someone said to me, again, on a national level, they texted me up and they said, can't we do better than these two? And, you know, I don't mean to be negative either, but it's like, I've found so many people saying, we don't have a good choice. But we do have a differing choice of the parties and the people and the vice presidents. And you know, Lord, give us wisdom and give our nation mercy. And it's a really hard time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I don't know. Great question. We should probably have a whole conversation. Maybe that's.
I have far more questions than just those two. So yes, that would
maybe that's Tuesdays with Tom some other time. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know if that was even helpful. Yeah, Holly.
As a closing thought, if you could give, you know, 2 or 3 words for when people come to seek advice from you, or when others come to seek advice from us, just a couple things to hang on to, things to keep in the forefront of our mind when we're being asked to give wisdom to somebody else. What would you say? Yeah,
a couple things. One is I would ask myself honestly, do I think I have something important to say here? I mean, sometimes we say things and we really haven't, you know, I think I have more wisdom in certain areas of life because I've done more work on that area. And when it's above my pay grade or out of my pay grade, I just say, I don't know if I have any wisdom for you because I don't know if I know enough about that. And if there's certain areas, let's say someone wants to go to a biblical text, I might know something about that, or economics. I think I know quite a bit about that, or, I mean, you know, where I could at least have a conversation. So that's what I'd say first. Do I really think I have something wise to say? Have I lived? Have I thought deeply about it? And secondly, I would say I would focus more on asking questions. often wisdom is not just giving information, it's helping people discover what they can't see in front of them. So I would be more raising questions than giving simple answers. Does that make sense? There's a couple ones. Is that our gong? We're gong? Okay. And thank you, Holly. Thank you for those of you who have tuned in. I hope it's been helpful for you. It's been really fun. It's fun, like Amy, to see you. And thank you for your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Tom, for committing to these 6 weeks of sharing wisdom with us, and we just have appreciated it, and it's been good food, soul food each week. So thanks, everybody, and we appreciate you, Tom, and good to be a family with you all.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Stay well, and stay safe.